it's Ainsley from Fairy Tale Vibes. Welcome back to episode 1 of my Ever After High retelling. Today we are covering first chapter through Legacy Day. So what is the goal in doing this Ever After High retelling series? The goal is to weave together both the plot from the books and the show to create one cohesive timeline. There may be some little things that we have to make up, some little mini theories, just if certain details weren't fully fleshed out in the books or the show. So last episode was episode 0, where we covered the world building and the backstory of Ever After High. So today we are going to start off with kind of discussing the main characters of Ever After High, leading into their first year of school all the way up to Legacy Day. Okay, so starting off with our first two characters, Apple and Raven, where are they before the school year starts? So Raven lives in her mom's evil castle, but the thing is her mom is not actually there right now because at this point her mom has already been sent to Mirror Prison. But Raven's castle is split into two halves because at some point when she was younger her parents did separate and she would spend a week on each half of the castle, and she preferred her dad's half because her mom was kind of mean to her. Her mom's half was always so scary, but now she kind of doesn't have to worry about all her mom's evil servants. Now that her mom's in Mirror Prison, they aren't really there anymore. But before Raven leaves to school, she does go visit her mom in the Mirror Prison because there's a mirror that shows the Mirror Prison in her mom's side of the castle, but she does not enjoy that. But she really loves her dad. Also, before she left for school, her dad, Cedar's dad, who's Pinocchio, and the Blue Fairy went on a little trip down to, or they all would visit down by the seashore. So it's very clear that Raven's close with Cedar, and that also her dad is friends with Pinocchio. Moving on, Apple's castle is much more cheerful. Apple's parents are very nice, at least that's how we see them. You know, they're a little bit bossy, but the servants are very nice to Apple. But also everybody in Apple's kingdom is obsessed with Apple. They're oh my gosh, Apple, you're the fairest one of them all. And it's just very stereotypically praising the princess. Moving on to some of the other characters. So we have Cedar's a little less popular, but before Cedar gets to Ever After High, we do find out because she she lives by the beach, and one time when she's visiting the beach, and I'm getting this from Once Upon a Time, which is kind of the Ever After High prequel book, she's at the beach and these boys are oh my gosh, you're the daughter of Pinocchio. And from that we find out that the main characters of stories outside Ever After High are kind of a little bit treated as celebrities, or at least they're known, so people know that she's the daughter of Pinocchio. It's also pretty obvious because she's made of wood. But then the boys are also talking about how they met Apple at a One Reflection concert, which yes, One Reflection is One Direction, and yes, I've said before, Raven is a Taylor Swift fan, Taylor Quick fan. Apple is a One Reflection One Direction fan, which is really funny. But obviously Apple's kind of famous anyway, but it is this does kind of show that most of the people who are at Ever After High do have destinies, because nobody at Ever After High really acts this way towards Cedar. Sure, they're praising Apple and they're scared of Raven because everybody's scared of Raven because she's the daughter of the evil queen. That's also something that's established. People are just really scared of her. Moving on to some of the other main characters, what they're up to. So Ashlyn, she's the daughter of Cinderella. She lives in a beautiful woodland castle and is actually not too far from Hunter Huntsman, so she kind of hears Hunter Huntsman in the woods before she gets to school. I'm just saying. But what else we do find out about Ashlyn? Again, I'm getting this from Once Upon a Time, which takes place right before Ever After High starts. Ashlyn's mom is supposed to die, which we're gonna get to Ashlyn a little bit later more, but oh my gosh, Ashlyn's mom is supposed to die. I didn't even think about this before, but her mom is Cinderella, right? But the thing is, when Ashlyn becomes Cinderella, Ashlyn has to go live with a stepmother and 2 stepsisters. And the thing about that is, in order for her to have a stepmother, I guess her mom has to die. I didn't even think about this. I guess, yeah, in Cinderella, her mom does die. But for some reason, because Ever After High is all a lot of times when characters are supposed to die, they don't. For example, the Candy Witch was supposed to be burnt alive, but she built a door in the back of her oven and escaped. I didn't know that they would just straight up kill Cinderella. I was shook about this. But yeah, that does give, Ashlyn another reason to not want to follow her destiny. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about the Wonderlandians. So, we find out that they all escaped from Wonderland about a year ago. So they escaped Wonderland before the start of their freshman year at Ever After High because this is their sophomore year that they're going into. Sophomore year is their legacy year. So Maddie, her dad, Lizzie, and Kitty escaped Wonderland. And the thing about that is Lizzie and Kitty, that means they have to stay at Ever After High during the summer because Maddie lives with her dad during the summer because her dad did escape. He has the tea shop. He has a house. I'm assuming it's above the tea shop in Ever After in Bookend. So Maddie does live with him during the summer, but then Kitty and Lizzie are just stuck with the White Queen, because again, the White Queen's also from Wonderland. She can't go back there during the summer, and the White Queen is like the advisor to the royal princesses. So she is technically actually Lizzie's advisor, because even though we think of Lizzie as more of like a bad person, she is still a princess, so the White Queen is her advisor. But yeah, they're stuck with the White Queen at the school, which brings up also, where is Headmaster Grimm? Because where else would Headmaster Grimm go? But maybe he's going on some certification. I'm also sure Giles Grimm is there too, because he's not like leaving the basement. But anyway, moving on. Oh, the Charmings. Okay, so the Charmings, they have a big castle. They also have a ton of cousins. Like before school starts, they go to like this kind of family reunion thing. But I do want to say, not all the Charmings are related. They do make this very clear, even though they do have a big Charming family. There are a ton of other big Charming families. But yeah, so the 3 Charming siblings, we got Daring. He thinks he's supposed to be Snow White's prince. We got Dexter. Dexter knows he's supposed to be a prince, but he doesn't know what prince he's going to be. He's also not very good at the heroics. Here's the thing. Daring thinks he's very good at the heroics, but we don't really actually ever see him do anything. Like when they're at their castle, they're getting ready to go to the ball. And Daring's like, hold on, Dexter, you go get Darling. I'm going to secure the path to like the carriage for Darling. And then Dexter's like, it's literally the driveway. Like there's no dragons in the driveway. But Darling is very strong. Like there's this thing that happens when again they're running late to their family reunion, and Dexter's like, oh no, we're gonna be late, we're gonna miss. It's actually not a carriage, it's like a tram. Or their parents are gonna get mad because they're gonna be late to the tram. And then Darling's like, shh, because Darling has a secret power. Her secret power, it's not really a secret power, it's a special power. Her special power is that when she goes like this, and you look at her, if you look at her, I have Darling right here actually. If you look at her when she whips her hair, you get kind of like stuck in slow-mo. And like they try to explain it and they're like, oh, it's because Darling's so beautiful, which Darling does have this thing, which like I know people like love Apple, like in Apple's kingdom people love Apple, but what you don't understand, the difference between Darling and Apple is that boys are obsessed with Darling. People are like very fixated on like Darling's beauty. The thing with Apple is more like they're fixated on Apple being their future evil queen. Like she is beautiful, but it's also like just a respect thing. People are hyper fixated on Darling's beauty. So like the justification of her, you know, going like that with her hair, and then if people see it, they move in slow motion, is that they're so stunned by her beauty. So anyway, she does that. And then Dexter, she told Dexter not to look at her when she did that. She just wanted her parents to look at her so that her parents would go in slow-mo and they could run outside. But Dexter, unfortunately, looked at her and he gets stuck in slow-mo. So then she just grabs him and puts him over her shoulder and runs outside. And then he's like, and she's like, don't tell anybody about that. So actually, remember how I said earlier about Darling's secret power? Darling's secret power is actually that she's really strong. Which if you know anything about Avatar, this is going to come into play later. Also, what's really weird in the show, and this is why I wanted to do this retelling, is because in the show, like, Darling is not there till like Spring Unsprung, but in the book she has been there from the beginning, and it's very clear that she's there from the beginning, and it just doesn't make sense for her not to have been there from the beginning, because her brothers were both there from the beginning, and Dexter is like her twin. Which also about that, because they all 3 of them are in their legacy year, so you're gonna be like, how are all 3 of them in their legacy year if they're not triplets? I think like literally Dexter and Darling were like born like 9 months like after like Daring. Like I think like their mom like got pregnant with them like right after she had Daring, and I think that's how they're close enough to be in the same like legacy year. And also I don't know, it's just all nice for them, then they can like study together and stuff, you know. But like Daring always makes it very clear that he's the oldest. Like he keeps calling Dexter like little brother. But anyway, let's move on to the actual start of the school year. So upon the start of the school year, Apple is already a little concerned about Raven. So like basically Raven had already moved into her room with like Maddie, because Maddie is Raven's best friend. But then Apple decides, you know what, I'm worried about her story. I want to make sure Raven does the right thing. So then Apple takes it upon herself to go tell that to Headmaster Grimm and then kick Maddie out of the room. And then Apple moves her stuff into the room. So now Apple and Raven are roommates, which I'm just like, you want Raven to hate you, so you're trying to be her friend. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, if it was a thing where you're trying to be like an annoying roommate, maybe that would work. But like, Apple's never purposely annoying to Raven. Like, here's the thing. Apple does sing in the room all the time. Like, Raven actually like remarks to herself like, oh my gosh, I love singing. I wish I could sing in the room, but like I'm too embarrassed to do it in front of Apple. But oh my gosh, Apple sings all the time. And like Apple's always singing to like these birds outside the window. And I have like a mini theory that Apple is actually not a great singer, and it's low-key driving Raven crazy, but Raven never says anything about it. Oh, and this is also an important note for later. Like, Raven really does like singing, but she doesn't want to do it in front of other people, especially Apple. But that's going to be an important note for later. Another important thing to clarify about Ever After High is that before there were Royals and Rebels, because Royals and Rebels really didn't exist till Legacy Day, there was Commoners and Royals. And basically prior to kind of like this year, like this generation of students, there were two separate common rooms. There was the commoner common room and the royal common room. And previously, like, they had to each stick to their common rooms. But as the student body president, Apple really, you know, wants to desegregate. So kind of like the first night that they're at Ever After High, they throw a party in the royal common room, but they also invite the commoners to be nice. Even though some people like Duchess are kind of stuck up about it, but it also kind of goes to show that Duchess doesn't exactly have the best destiny. Like, it's kind of pointed out that she's kind of the only princess, like royal princess, who doesn't have a happily ever after. And she's a little salty about this, which may be why, like, she was kind of like, you know, she probably liked kind of like the exclusivity of the royals having their own common room. So then when commoners started coming in there, she was probably a little annoyed because she was like, oh my gosh, like, after this, my life's gonna be trash anyway, and now I don't even get anything special. Not to like justify her behavior, I'm just like saying. Another thing to note is Raven is technically royal, because I mean her mom's royalty, but previous to this, when they were separated, Raven had always like hung out with the commoners more, and most of the commoners did end up becoming rebels later on, which I think the commoners in general do support Raven because she's like more down to earth and understands them. And also I think the commoners just generally have a lot of resentment to the royals because for so much time the royals have held all the power. Also, a lot of the royals are the ones with happily ever afters. Like, sure, some of the commoners do have happy endings, but they're still like poor. Like, I wouldn't say like Hunter Huntsman has like, you know, a bad ending, but when we learned about Hunter and, you know, Ashlyn's home life, like Ashlyn lives in a huge castle and like Hunter lives in a tiny cabin in the woods. So even if, you know, they have happy endings, the commoners, they're not like rich. So I can see why they have a lot of frustration with the royals being like, oh my gosh, we are going to follow our destinies, and the commoners like, you don't even understand it, like, you're not poor, like, you get a castle, I get a cabin, you know? Okay, then moving on to the Legacy Day rehearsal. This is the day that Cupid gets there, but I'm not going to talk about Cupid's story right now because she is not really, like, relevant to the main plot. But if you want to know about Cupid, I already did an entire video deep diving into, like, everything about her, like, her plot. So go check that out. But let's talk about the main thing that happens at Legacy Day. So, like, or Legacy Day rehearsal. So, like, when they're getting ready for the Legacy Day rehearsal, like, they're waiting in line, Dexter's telling Raven about how he's, like, oh my gosh, like, I want to know, like, what my destiny is. And he's kind of disappointed because they're not using the real book on Legacy Day, so he can't read what his destiny is because he has no idea what his destiny actually is, like I said before. And then Raven's like, yeah, I'm also, like, not sure if I want to follow my mom's destiny, blah, 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 you know. And then when Raven gets up there to practice on Legacy Day, she asks Headmaster Grimm what would happen if she didn't sign. He's like, you'll go poof. And then Raven gets upset and runs away, and then everybody starts, like, freaking out. And then not too long after that, kind of, you know, Dexter and Raven end up talking a little bit, and Raven's like, I really just, like, want to read what the book says, because Raven actually doesn't know if she's just gonna follow the classic Snow White destiny, or because her mom did all that extra evil stuff like Curse Wonderland, if Raven's also gonna have to do that, like, if that adds to the destiny. And Dexter's like, yeah, I just also really want to read the book. And Raven's like, oh my gosh, what if we break into Headmaster Grimm's office? And, like, Dexter doesn't want to be involved with that, but he's supportive of Raven doing it. But here's the thing. Dexter low-key is a rebel from the beginning. He just doesn't want to, like, admit it to himself or to anybody else. Because I think he's a little scared of Daring and his family. Not, like, Daring himself is scary, but just, like, the family pressure. Like, he doesn't want to be outcasted. He also doesn't really know how much of a rebel Darling is. Like, he knows that Darling's hiding some things, but he doesn't know to, like, what extent. But he's like, yeah, I'll support you, but, like, I'm not going to go with you to Headmaster Grimm's office. And Raven's like, okay, I'll figure out a plan. At the same time, Apple is very worried about Raven. And Apple is like, how can I make sure Raven, like, does what she's supposed to be doing? So out of her concern, Apple goes to Humphrey. And it's very important to mention, Humphrey has a huge crush on Apple. Humphrey is also, like a computer genius or a mirror genius, because, you know, they have mirror technology. So basically, Apple has Humphrey set up this system, and Apple goes up to Humphrey. She's like, hey, could you help me with this? And what he does is he has it so, like, all the mirrors, which there's a lot of mirrors in the school, they're all spying on Raven, so that Apple can, like, look at her mirror pad and see where Raven is. So basically, also another thing to note, at some point, yeah, because, like, Dexter does have a big crush on Raven, so at some point during this time, Dexter was trying to ask out Raven. And then they meet on the balcony for the first time, because basically what happens the first time Raven and Dexter meet on the balcony is that Dexter is trying to ask out Raven, but then Raven just ends up asking, hey, do you want to come with me to Briar's party as a friend? He's like, sure. So that's kind of like their first semi-romantic encounter. But then moving on, the next thing that happens with that is that Raven does end up breaking into Headmaster Grimm's office, and how she does this is before she had seen that Helga and Gus were outside Headmaster Grimm's office, and she's like, I need to distract them. So she takes like little like cookie pieces and leads them away to distract them. And then she's like, it's locked. So basically, Raven texts Maddie, hey, can you tell Blondie there's porridge in Headmaster Grimm's office? Because Blondie, you know, Blondie Locks, obsessed with porridge because she is the daughter of Goldilocks, who literally broke into the cabin of like the three bears for porridge. So she tricks Blondie into unlocking Headmaster Grimm's office. And on top of that, she kind of tricks Blondie into unlocking the case that the book is in. So basically what happens is then Blondie leaves, and then Raven's like, oh, actually the smell of porridge must be coming through the vent from the cafeteria. And Blondie's like, okay. So Blondie leaves. Raven is left alone with the book. And she's like, okay, I'm going to look for me and Dexter's destinies. She's like, I got this. So she looks for their destinies, and she's like, the pages are blank. Which at the time, Raven thought that this was because, oh, like their destiny doesn't appear till they're ready to sign the book on Legacy Day. Thinking about it now, that book was like fake, so maybe Headmaster Grimm just didn't write in their destiny yet, or didn't put in the magic to like show their destiny yet. Because I don't know if he was actually sitting there writing it. I'm sure he just like used magic to prescribe it, because you're gonna find this out at the end of like this retelling. But Headmaster Grimm is a lot more powerful magic-wise than anybody really knows. But then moving on, Raven decides, okay, if I can't see her destiny, she's like, I at least want to know if anybody has not signed before. And she flips all the way back. And then she sees Bella's sister. Bella's sister from the Tale of Two Sisters, she never signed. So Raven's like, I gotta leave. But at the same time, Apple was spying on her. Pause. If you are enjoying the video, be sure to go down below and leave a like. And if you want to see more, subscribe. Thanks. Don't worry, like, Apple doesn't tell on Raven or anything, because Apple's also worried, oh my gosh, what if I tell on Raven and Raven gets expelled? Like, then she's not gonna follow her destiny. I'm like, girl, low-key, like, Headmaster Grimm is so worried about her following her destiny. Like, he's not gonna do that as her punishment for this. But whatever, Apple doesn't tell. Apple is a loyal friend in that sense, I guess. So just a little note why Apple is so obsessed with Raven following her destiny. So basically, Apple does have trauma. When she was little, she fell down a well, and even though she was only stuck like treading water in the well for like 2 minutes, she thought she was like gonna drown. She thought she was gonna die. So as soon as she got out of the well, she just like promised herself that she would follow her destiny as soon as possible, because she is convinced as soon as she gets her happily ever after, she will be safe and nothing else bad can happen to her. And then also, if Raven doesn't sign, that opens up the possibility of other people not following their prescribed destinies, which could also lead to the possibility of other evil that is not predictable and that cannot be stopped. So I think that's why Apple is so scared, because she's just really worried about like being safe. Just some little things I want to cover that are kind of interdispersed between this main plot line. First of all, like, Raven, Cedar, Maddie are tight, and Cerise is like Cedar's roommate, but they kind of start to hang out with Cerise a little bit. But Raven does notice like there is kind of something up with Cerise, but Raven doesn't say anything. But I think Raven has some suspicions that, you know, there's something going on with Cerise's parentage. But then not too long after Raven like looks at the book, she goes to kind of talk to Dexter about it again. And this is kind of like when they have their scene on the balcony where they kind of like sing Taylor Swift. If you don't know what happens, like, I've talked about this before in my TikTok, but basically like Raven walks out into the balcony and Dexter is singing like Enchanted, basically like Taylor Quick's version of it, and then he's like embarrassed and Raven's like, no, I love Taylor Quick, and then Raven sings it back to him, which again, you know, really shows that she likes Dexter, because she said she would never be caught dead singing in front of Apple, but she's singing in front of Dexter, just saying. But then Raven's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what to do, like there was nothing written for us in the Storybook of Legends, but then I found that there was this one girl who didn't sign, like, how would I know? And then Dexter's like, if there were phone books back then, maybe we could look it up in a phone book. But then Raven's like, and then they actually do go to the library and they look up a phone book, and what they actually do is they don't find like Bella's sister in the phone book or anything. I guess they would call it like a mirror book. But they don't find Bella's sister or anything, but what they do find is they just wanted to find like the oldest person who's still alive. So they take the most recent mirror book and compare it with like the oldest mirror book, and the one person who's still alive is Old Man Winters. So Raven's like, we gotta go talk to Old Man Winters. And then again, Apple's still spying on her, so Apple knows this. So Apple finally like admits this to Raven. Raven's a little annoyed, but Raven's like, but Apple's like, I want to know. Let's go talk to Old Man Winters together. So they like cross the troll bridge. They go out to speak to Old Man Winters. And Old Man Winters is like, yeah, like, I don't know what happened to her, like, she disappeared, like, I don't know. And he's like, and Raven's like, did she go poof, or did she, like, run away? And then he's like, I don't know, but, like, maybe, like, somewhere in the school you could find her old stuff. And then, like Apple and Raven are, like, thinking, they're like, where could we find, like, stuff of hers? And then after this, Raven and Apple are on their way back to the school, and they do stop at the Mad Hatter's tea shop because Raven's like, wait, Apple, let me try to ask Maddie to see if she's really good at finding stuff. Let's see if she knows where we could find, like, the belongings of Bella's sister. And she asks Maddie, like, she's not specific because she doesn't want Maddie to know about their quest, because even though Raven is, like, besties with Maddie, she's like, I know Maddie may accidentally, like, say something. So, Raven is just like, Maddie, if there was something missing for, like, a really long time, where would you look for it? And Maddie's like, maybe the Lost and Crowned office. And Raven's like, there's a Lost and Crowned office? Like, her and Apple did not know about this, but they go to the Lost and Crowned office. There's, like, this ghost, and there's just, like, piles and piles of stuff. And they're like, oh my gosh. How are we going to search through all these things? And then they're trying to ask the ghost. They're, like, talking to the ghost. And they're like, ghost, is there anything on here that is, like, that was Bella's sister's? And the ghost is like, no, I can't tell you because it's the Lost and Crowned. It's not lost and found. Like, it's not supposed to be found. So then Raven, like, writes on the sign, like, it's, like, Lost and Crowned. She writes, and one thing found. So Lost and Crowned and one thing found. She's like, okay, now we need to find this one thing. And the ghost's like, okay. And the ghost, like, brings this box, and it says Bella's sister. And in the box, they basically find this, like, sketchbook. And in this sketchbook, they find this sketch of a tree. And Raven's like, okay, I guess we gotta look for this tree. Don't worry, we'll get to this tree because they do end up finding it. But, like, some things that happen kind of leading up to this. So at some point, Maddie does take Raven to see Giles Grimm for the first time, because Raven just really wants to know, like, will I go poof if I sign this Book of Legends? It's getting close to Legacy Day. So Maddie takes Raven to go see Giles Grimm, and this is when she first meets Giles Grimm, and Giles Grimm is like, no, you won't go poof, but also Riddlish is not an exact language, so, like, Raven's, like, still, like, freaking out, like, oh my gosh. Also, then the next thing that kind of happens is they get their pets, which this is barely shown in the show. I did kind of rewatch the show, and I do notice that they briefly show, like, I think Cerise's pet, because Cerise got, like, a wolf. And then, like, I think they've shown Maddie's pet, but Maddie didn't get her pet here. They've also shown Kitty's pet, but Kitty didn't get her pet here because they already had their pets. They got them from Wonderland. But the rest of Ever After gets their pets. But, like, Kitty's pet is kind of interesting. It's, like, a little, like, caterpillar. Anyway, so they get their pets. They go out into the woods. They do this, like, thing. And they have to, like, they have to, like, throw something and call their name. Their pet comes to them, whatever. Raven gets Nevermore, which you guys probably know Nevermore from Dragon Games, but Nevermore was already here. Again, just like Darling, like, these things, like, these characters were already here. They just, like, were too lazy to put them in the show. Anyway, so Raven gets Nevermore. Everybody's scared of Nevermore at first. Apple gets a really cute little white fox named Gala, like, you know, Gala Apple. But the important thing that happens when they're getting their pets is Raven and Apple see this tree. And Raven and Apple are like, because it was the tree from the sketch with Bella's sister. They're like, there's a hole in that tree, and they're like, I feel like Bella's sister could have hid something in that hole. But they can't look in the hole right now because everybody's around, and the people would be sus of them. So they're like, we'll come back later. And they do come back several times to the woods, because the students keep going to the woods to play with their animals, but there's always too many people around. But anyway, the point I want to make is Raven does notice, when all these times going on in the woods, that Ashlyn and Hunter are kind of close. And this is when she starts thinking about Ashlyn and Hunter. And Apple does not notice that or anything, but she does notice that, like, sometimes, like, Ashlyn will walk this way and then Hunter will walk this way. And she's like, just a little sus. The other thing that does end up happening around this point in time is that this is kind of like when Kitty spots Cerise, like, racing a wolf. And the reason I think this scene, this is, like, from a webisode, the reason I think this scene happens, like, right around now in the timeline is because I do believe the wolf that Cerise was racing was her pet, because in the book she does get a pet wolf as her pet. So I think that was her pet, and she was, like, playing with it in the woods. But then Kitty's like, Cerise, you beat that wolf in a race. Like, you're pretty strong. And then this is when Cerise does end up finally telling, like, Raven her secret. And Raven's like, oh, no. And then Raven basically, like, does that thing where she's like, oh, like, Kitty's like, why is Cerise so fast? And then Raven's like, oh, I put, like, a spell on her to go fast. And then Raven's like, see? And then she makes, like, Kitty, like, run super fast away. Because she does actually cast, like, a running fast spell on Kitty, which is really funny. But anyway, moving on to, like, the actual important stuff to the plot. So one night, Raven and Apple are like, let's, like, sneak out to, like, go back to the woods and see if there's anything in the hole in that tree, see if Bella's sister left anything in there. So Raven and Apple are like, okay. So they sneak out the castle. The problem is there's these night briars surrounding the castle. But they see Ashlyn out there and they're like, hey, Ashlyn, can you try to help us? And Ashlyn's like, sure, because apparently, like Ashlyn can like sing and like the night briars, which when we think of the night briars, imagine the briars that surrounded like Sleeping Beauty Castle and Sleeping Beauty. Like they're these giant briars, and Headmaster Grimm puts them up because they're like meant to protect the students, especially after the evil queen. Even though the evil queen's like already in prison, he says it's like a security measure. So these night briars come up at night, but like Ashlyn can kind of sing and like make the night briars like go like this, but then it ends up not working because the night briars, I think they get like scared of Raven because of like her dark magic, so they end up like trying to close on them. But then again with the Hunter thing, Ashlyn's like, wait, let me go get help, and then Ashlyn runs around the school, and then Hunter ends up coming back. How did Ashlyn know that Hunter was going to be out there? But Hunter ends up getting them through with the axe. And then Apple and Raven are basically like, and also, like, Apple has not connected the dots yet about Ashlyn and Hunter. Just Raven has. Raven's very observant. But then Hunter gets them through with his axe. He cuts the night briars. And then they're like, we won't tell that you were out here if we won't tell that you were out here. And he's like, okay. So then they go to the tree. They find the note. And basically, the note says, it was like the note that Bella's sister left in the tree was actually to her sister, who was named Bruda's sister, which, like, we'll get to this later, but in the Tale of Two Sisters, one sister is supposed to be the beautiful sister and one's supposed to be the ugly sister. So Bella was the beautiful sister, and then her sister Bruda was the ugly sister. But she's like, oh my gosh, like, and in the story, the beautiful sister is also the villain. So she left this note, and she's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to fulfill our story and do all these horrible things, Bruda. Like, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna run away. She's like, I'm gonna run away to the mystery caves. Meet me there. And then she put the note in the tree. And then Raven's like, oh my gosh. So she did live. She didn't go poof. She ran away to the mystery caves. And then Apple's like, well, maybe they both went poof because this note was still here. And, like, so that means that Bruda never found it. So maybe they both went poof. And then Raven's like, okay, well, I guess the only way to find out is that if we go to the mystery caves. So basically, they're like, we know the perfect time to go to the mystery caves. So right before Legacy Day, there was this Sleeping Beauty Festival, or sorry, the Beauty Sleep Festival, whatever. It's this festival where people sleep. We also find out that like a lot of the royals have festivals, like Apple's family, like Snow White has a festival, and it's just like about eating pies, because, you know, Snow White likes pies, whatever. But this is like, and this, you can also see why the commoners are kind of annoyed with the royals, because, like, the royals are so important that they get festivals to honor their stories. Meanwhile, the commoners have no festivals to honor their stories. Also, Briar doesn't even like the Beauty Sleep Festival. She's literally like, I wish we just had, like, a giant party festival. Like, that would be better. You just sleep for 2 days? She's like, what is that? I'm gonna have to sleep for, like, 100 years. I don't want to do this. Also, an important note, during the Beauty Sleep Festival, everybody gets put under a magical sleep for 2 days. But basically, Apple and Raven decide to sneak out before, like, they're gonna fall asleep so that they can go, you know, go to these mystery caves and try to see, like, are Bruda and Bella's ancestors there, like, did they survive? So basically what they do is, like, Apple and Raven, like, pack their bags. They get, like, all their stuff for, like, their long, whatever, like, trek out to these mystery caves during, like, the 2 days of the Beauty Sleep Festival is for 2 days. So they have 2 days to kind of, like, do a hike out to these caves and see if there's any sign that they lived. So they pack their bags, and then, like, right before the Beauty Sleep Festival, like, the staff comes to check that they're asleep. So, like, Mama Bear, who I guess is a staff, comes to check if they're asleep. They're like, oh, yes, we're going to sleep. Good night. And then as soon as she leaves, they're like, okay, jump out the window. Like, get your pack. And they, like, climb out the window, and then they run out before the night briars go up. It's very dramatic. And, like, going to the mystery caves, like, hiking there is a whole, like, ordeal. Like, they do say, like, oh, too bad the stream is running in the wrong direction. Because if, like, the stream was running in the correct direction, they could have just, like, taken a boat straight to the mystery caves. But it was, like, you know, the current would have been going against them. That would have been too hard. So they hike there. The thing is, they kind of have to go through, like, treacherous ground to hike. They go through the marsh. They're kind of scared of getting, like, abducted by the Marsh King. Then they go on these cliffs, and they're scaling these cliffs, and they end up needing help. So, like, Raven gets these goblins to help them, but then, like, the goblins want to eat Apple. Like, at first, basically, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll help you if we can have that plump apple. And Raven's like, sure. And then Apple's like, what? But Raven was just tricking them, because then she just gave them, like, an actual apple from her backpack, but then they're still mad. They're like, we still want to eat this apple. And then Apple, oh my gosh, like, this is, like, part of the reason I thought that maybe Apple was going to be the evil queen, or, like, the evil queen's daughter, my swapped at birth theory, because Apple stands up to them, and she's like, no, you do not disrespect me, I'm the future Snow White. And, like, the goblins are like, okay. And then afterwards, Apple's like, oh my gosh, Raven, I've never talked like that before. Also, I forgot to say this earlier, but like I didn't mention this because I mentioned it so much in my swapped at birth theory, but like there are like several instances where they mention that Apple's hair is the wrong color because Apple's hair is blonde. It's supposed to be black for her destiny. Like when she's getting ready, there's like a servant who's like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful like her mom, except for the fact that she doesn't have black hair, which later I read Once Upon a Time. Like, again, Once Upon a Time is kind of like the prequel novel, or not novel, it's kind of like a collection of different characters' diaries, or like little stories about each character. In Kitty's story, we find out that Kitty was actually the one who she kind of snuck up behind the servants and said this to like annoy Apple. So it wasn't even one of the servants that said that Apple didn't look beautiful because she didn't have black hair. But that's really annoying. But the other person who says it is Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga, like, literally is like, Apple, you are extremely disappointing because Apple has the wrong color hair. And I'm like, Baba Yaga, do you know something? Like, that's what I said in my swapped at birth theory. But this is not the swapped at birth theory, so let's move on. So Apple and Raven finally get to these mystery caves, which are right along this beach, and they're just looking for any signs of life. Like, was anybody living in these caves? Is there any sign that Bella's sister lived? And they're looking, they find this table and some furniture in one of the caves, and then they're like, did Bella's sister live? Well, then they find a skeleton. And Raven is hoping that it's not Bella's sister's skeleton, but then Apple looks on the table, and there's this old bag, and it, like, says Bella's sister on the bag, and she's like, oh no, Raven, this must be Bella's sister's skeleton. And then Raven's like, that's weird. Like, Headmaster Grimm said if we didn't sign, we'd go poof, not become a skeleton. And Apple's like, well, maybe like not all the way poof, maybe just like poof then skeleton. And Raven's like a little sus. And then they look, and Apple's like, look, no, she must have gone poof, because look, it says on the wall, and then there's like red paint on the wall, and the red paint on the wall says, I should have signed the book. And then Raven's like, oh no. And then Raven looks at the wall, and she goes, hang on, there's like a gnat stuck in the red paint. And Raven's like, if this was really old, because Bella's sister was from like, I don't know, like 200 years ago, like, why is there a gnat stuck in the paint that makes the paint like look fresh? Because if it was really that old, the gnat would have like disintegrated. And Apple's like, I don't know, but she's like, look, Raven, you're looking at too many tiny details because you want to see things your way. Like, everything's proving here that Bella's sister did not survive. And then Raven's like, okay, I'll come back to this later, but I want to point out, it doesn't make sense, because, like, by the red paint on the wall, I'm assuming that's supposed to, like, resemble blood. They never actually say it's blood, probably because Mattel wouldn't let them say that, but, like, I'm assuming it's supposed to be blood. And here's the thing, if Bella's sister went poof and turned into a skeleton poof, that doesn't involve, like, bleeding, so, like, I'm assuming, like, they're thinking, like, as she's dying, she's writing, like, I should have signed the book in her blood or something on the wall of the cave, but yet she just poofed into a skeleton, allegedly. So I just want to point out that this just does not make sense, but we'll get back to this later. So then anyway, they go out, and again, there's like kind of that stream because they're on the beach. But this time they can actually take it back, because remember how I said last time the stream was going the wrong way? Well, now they can take a boat back. So they get back to Ever After, but you know, everybody's still asleep at Ever After High. So they basically end up spending the night at the Mad Hatter's tea shop, like, because they knock on the door, and then he's like, oh, sure. And I guess he has like a teacup like in the back that's like filled with like pillows and blankets, and he just lets like Apple and Raven sleep in this giant teacup. So they sleep, and the next morning they go back to the school. And then Raven gets back to the school, and she's like, you know what, I feel bad, I shouldn't have lied to Maddie about this. Like, I can trust, like, not, like, she still, you know, isn't sure that Maddie would like talk about it, but she just feels bad that she like didn't tell Maddie before. So then Raven decides to tell Maddie all that has been going on. And Maddie is like, oh my gosh, I know. Because when Raven was gone, everybody else was put under like the beauty sleep spell for the beauty sleep festival. It didn't work on Maddie. Maddie was bored. Maddie heard the narrator talking about Bella's sister. Maddie decided to go look for the Tale of Two Sisters in the Vault of Lost Stories. The Vault of Lost Stories is also where Giles Grimm lives. And then so Raven's like, oh my gosh, take me down there. And then they're trying to find the entrance because Maddie has taken Raven down there once before to see Giles Grimm. But the entrance changes every time, according to Maddie. And this time they couldn't, like, find the proper entrance. So basically they had to use, like, a Wonderlandian potion to shrink themselves down and climb through a keyhole. And then they finally get there. And then they find the story. And then sure enough, like, they find the Tale of Two Sisters. Raven reads it. And then in the back, they find notes from Bella and Brutus' sister about how they were going to turn, like, a well into a portal and go to a faraway realm where, like, they didn't have to follow a prescribed destiny. I'm not going to speak about this too much right now because I might do another video about this, but if you've seen any of my TikToks about Ever After High and Monster High, I'm sorry, but like, I think there's a chance that maybe Bella and Bruno went to Monster High because Monster High does exist, like, in the same universe as Ever After High, or even not Monster High, just one of the other story realms, because there's many story realms, like, Ever After High is the fairy tale realm, and then Monster High is, like, in the realm of scary stories, so, like, I don't know, I think they just went far enough away from Ever After High that they weren't in, like, part of whatever, like, the story universe. They weren't a part of that was controlled by Milton Grimm, so they didn't have to like follow prescribed destiny. So yeah, I think they just ran really far away, and obviously Milton Grimm doesn't want anybody else doing that, which is why he's been keeping it secret to a certain degree. You guys will see what I'm talking about. And then they also like asked Giles, they're like, did Bella live? And he's like, yeah, but again, Riddlish is not an exact language, just like Maddie told Raven last time when like Raven had Maddie ask Giles about whether or not she'd go poof. But Raven is pretty sure, like, based on the book and based on, like, what Giles Grimm allegedly said to Maddie, Raven is pretty sure that Bella's sister did not go poof at this point. So clearly whatever happened with the skeleton in the cave was a hoax. But then the next day's Legacy Day. And Raven is already nervous when she wakes up on Legacy Day because she realizes, remember how I talked about the Nightbriars before? The Nightbriars are not down. The Nightbriars are still up. Usually the Nightbriars go down during the day. But Raven's like, oh my gosh, Milton Grimm wants to make sure nobody else runs away like Bella's sister did. But Raven's like, okay, I gotta keep it cool. So Raven basically gets summoned down to the dungeon to go get her legacy outfit. So like all the girls are technically supposed to wear the same outfits as their parents. Like Maddie just kind of wears like a modified version of her father's outfit because obviously she's a lot shorter and like smaller than her father. Apple just kind of wears her mom's outfit as it is. Apple is sus. She thinks Briar like altered her mom's dress to make it a little bit more fashionable. And then Raven goes down to the dungeon to get her mom's outfit, and Raven just is not feeling the dress. So what does Raven decide to do? I just remembered I had these dolls. But what does Raven decide to do? She basically decides to keep on the shirt, the belt, and the leggings and the shoes that she already had on, and then her cape and her crown, and I'm assuming this thing too, were like from her mother's legacy outfit, but like everything else was hers. Okay, so on to the actual Legacy Day ceremony. So we see Ashlyn sign the book. Now when Ashlyn signs the book, she is not very happy. She is kind of crying, like a little bit, obviously not dramatically. That would like be a bigger hullabaloo, but like we can see that she's sad. And Raven notices this, and Raven's like, oh my gosh, it must be about Hunter. And then like Apple sees this, and Apple is like, why are you sad, girl? You're a princess. But then anyway, I'm also here thinking maybe she's also sad because I don't know, her mom has to die. But anyway, then we see Cedar sign. Cedar's actually happy about signing because she wants to be a real girl. And here's the thing about rebels. Rebels can want to follow their own destiny. The main thing about rebels is that they support Raven. Anyway, support Raven not wanting to follow her destiny. So Cedar signs, Cedar's happy. Another thing I want to note that I kind of forgot to say before, Cedar at this point is the only other person who knows that Ashlyn and Hunter are together because she accidentally found them in the woods. That's from like one of the webisodes. If you guys know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But Cedar knows, but despite being only able to tell the truth, she's kept a secret. Another interesting thing is that her only being able to tell the truth is actually different from Pinocchio, because Pinocchio was basically cursed to like grow a long nose if he lied, but for whatever reason the blue fairy decided to do it differently for Cedar, which brings up the question, was the blue fairy trying to like disobey Headmaster Grimm? I don't know, but moving on. So then Daring signs, and then Apple signs, and Apple's like, Raven, I know you're gonna do the right thing, like as like Apple's leaving the stage and Raven's coming on. But like Raven sees it, and the book opens up, and her worst fear is confirmed. Not only is she gonna follow the Snow White Evil Queen destiny, no, she's gonna do everything else evil her mom did. So her mom basically started expanding evil into other stories. So her mom basically, you know, kicked the Dark Fairy and Sleeping Beauty aside, took over the role of the Dark Fairy. Her mom then did a bunch of stuff, and then her mom went to go and curse Wonderland, and Raven sings, and Raven's like, I cannot do this. So Raven's like, enough, I'm not gonna follow my destiny. She rips her page out, and it's pandemonium. People start freaking out, and some people, the people who, like a lot of the commoners who end up becoming the rebels, start cheering, and Apple's freaked out, because Apple's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die, and these people are happy like that Raven didn't sign. And then it's like mass chaos. And then there's all these like boys who like royal boys who would probably want to attack Raven, and then Darling faints, and this distracts them. And then my personal headcanon about this is I'm pretty sure, like, we know at this point, like, Darling is like a rebel. Like, she's always been a rebel. She's never wanted to like do that, like be a damsel in distress, but she's just like secretly a rebel. So I think like Darling was trying to help Raven out by fainting to like get these boys to come to her, because I just don't think Darling would be shocked enough to faint. Like, I think that was a performance. Like I genuinely don't think Darling would faint at that. But anyway, so Darling instructs the boys from like attacking Raven. Apple's clearly upset with that, like Raven. So then Raven like freezes everybody, and then she has a little talk with Apple, and Apple's like too upset, and then Apple like gets mad. And then Apple goes away. And then the next person Raven unfreezes is Maddie. And Maddie's like, oh my gosh. And then basically Raven decided to unfreeze everybody. But then in doing that, Raven's like, I need to get out. So Raven actually tried to like cast a bunch of mist so that she could escape without everybody like coming after her. That didn't work. The mist actually shot her straight up into the sky. But Nevermore, again, her dragon buddy, he caught her. He brought her, and then he dropped her on the balcony. And then Raven goes to the commoner's common room, because again, Raven does not want to be around these royals, even though Raven is technically of royal blood. She's like, I just want to go to the common room. So she goes there, and then like a bunch of the rebels come in. So like basically Maddie, obviously Cedar, Cerise, Hunters, I think maybe some other people, I forget. I don't know. They're there, and they're like, Raven, what you did was so brave. And then there's a knock on the door, and then Hunter gets it, and it's Dexter, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're a royal. And then Raven's like, no, let him in. And then Dexter comes in, and he's like, I actually think what you did was brave, Raven, but don't tell that, like, daring that. And Raven's like, okay. And then like they're talking, and then basically what is supposed to happen after Legacy Day, which they don't show this in the show, but there's a dance, and it's like kind of on this like island, I think. I don't know, they have to cross the water to get to it. And then they're like, it's too late, we're gonna miss the carriages to the boats. And then Dexter's like, no, you guys should come. And then they're like, yeah, like Legacy Days for everybody. So then they try to go and get the boats, and they miss the carriage. So they run to the boat dock, and then they get there, and then Daring's like on the boat, and there's like one boat left, and he's like, come on, Dexter, get in. And then Dexter's like, no, they should come with me. And like, this is the first time that Dexter actually stands up to Daring. He's like, no, they're with me. And then Daring's just like, no. So then Dexter goes, and Raven's like, don't worry, Dexter, we'll get a ride. And then they're trying to figure out what to do, and then Maddie goes into the water, and she's like, I got somebody. And Maddie finds this little 10-year-old girl who lives in the water. Her name is Coral Witch. She's the daughter of the Sea Witch, like from The Little Mermaid. And she gets like all these like kind of dark sea creatures, like eels and octopuses. They basically ride these dark sea creatures over like to where the party is, like on the island, I think. I forget if it's on an island or just like on the other side, but they have to cross the water. They get there, they get to the party. The royals are annoyed that they're at the party. But Raven's like, whatever. And Raven is finally confident. It's also important to mention that previously, because again, Raven wants to like be a musician. She had like wanted to try to sing, and she'd approached like Sparrowhood and like his Merry Men, because they have like a band. It's like Sparrow and the Merry Men. And they were like, no, you're a joke, you're not singing with us or whatever. But Raven just goes up on stage, she's like, you know what, Sparrow, she kicks Sparrow off stage, she's like, I'm singing. And they established that there is a traditional Legacy Day song, which let me read you the traditional Legacy Day song. So the traditional Legacy Day song, which is the one that the Merry Men were supposed to be playing, actually goes like this. Believe that everything is waiting for you, except that your life is set in stone. It's time to take your promised tale and become the person you've always known. But then when Raven gets up on stage, she decides to give it a twist, and she goes, it's an open book, I wrote it in reverse, a brand new hook, forget that curse, it's a royal cause with a rebel heart. So yeah, Raven is the one singing the Hour After High theme song. You heard that right. So that is basically kind of how the main story ends, but there is still more tea after that. We find out that Headmaster Grimm was the villain all along. Basically, he was the one who orchestrated the whole Bella's sister thing. So, if you remember, the first time Raven found out about Bella's sister was when she was looking at the Storybook of Legends in Headmaster Grimm's office. And like many of us know, that's not actually the real Storybook of Legends. So that means somebody purposely had to leave Bella's signature blank in the Storybook of Legends. And I don't know, I think Headmaster Grimm purposely left it blank in case anybody went looking. So then what's the next thing that Raven did after that to try to figure out where Bella's sister went? Her and Apple went to go talk to Old Man Winters. Guess what? They never actually talked to Old Man Winters. Remember how I said Headmaster Grimm is actually much more powerful than people actually know? Well, guess what? He created a spell to make himself look exactly like Old Man Winters. Basically like Polyjuice Potion from Harry Potter. Imagine that. They didn't talk to Old Man Winters. They talked to Headmaster Grimm. And Old Man Winters had told them, maybe look to see if Belle left anything behind in the school. Well, guess what? Headmaster Grimm was the one who planted the box with Bella's sister's sketchbook in the Lost and Crowned with the picture of the tree. And then Raven and Apple went to look for the tree. And then guess what? In the tree, they found the note that Bella's sister went to the mystery caves. Guess who put the note there? Headmaster Grimm. And then Apple and Raven go to the mystery caves. And then they find a skeleton. Guess who put the skeleton there? Headmaster Grimm. And Headmaster Grimm admits this. He got Gus and Helga, who are the son and daughter of Hansel and Gretel, respectively. They're technically cousins, but Headmaster Grimm got them to write on the cave wall in red paint. I should have signed the book, which I know red paint is basically like a code word for blood, but I do think they did actually write it in red paint because they didn't have blood. I think Headmaster Grimm wanted it to look like to Raven that it was blood, though. But yeah, this man, basically an evil mastermind, but at the same time, he was kind of dumb. Because, like, his plan didn't really make sense. Like, he said go poof, and then he left a skeleton, which I think he left the skeleton to show that, like, she did die, so that Raven couldn't be like, oh my gosh, Apple, she just, like, ran away. But then, like, the red blood or whatever on the cave wall, like, that also doesn't make sense. Because even if you're just poofing into a skeleton, how does that involve bleeding? Because the thing that I think Headmaster Grimm was trying to portray is that Bella's sister was, like, dramatically dying, and she's like, I should have signed the book. But, like, before he said that you would go poof, and even if you poofed into a skeleton, how would you be doing that? Like, you just go poof, you know? Also, if you've also seen my TikToks where I've compared Headmaster Grimm to, like, Emperor Bellows from the Owl House, now you know why. And if you're like, what are you talking about? Now you're probably gonna be compelled to, like, watch my TikToks. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. I do want to tell you I'm having an Etsy release very soon. So yeah, if you're interested in any of these little designs, be sure to definitely check out my Etsy. It will be linked below. Sorry, her hair is a little messy. But yeah, you guys get the picture. Check it out for these cute little doll outfits. There will also be more to come in the future. But if you stayed to the end of the video, awesome. You should go comment a crown emoji to show me you stayed in the comment section. You can also leave a little note about your favorite part of the video or if you have a question. And then be sure to like and subscribe if you want to support me and also if you want to like keep seeing my content. The other things I basically have to say is my socials will be down below. My website will be down below. My Discord, check it all out. Bye guys, love you.